Yo guys, this is Reinhardt, it's your favorite Russian talking, and this is gonna be a little bit of a different video because here I'll explain you exactly what's the difference between the Skyforge leveling and traditional MMO leveling, and there will be some graphs and everything like that. So please have the open mind, watch them. I know they'll be a little bit boring and a little bit dry, but they're gonna be a good quality information here. And you will be able to see the actual vision that the Skyforge developers want you to see. So first of all, for us to understand how the actual leveling works, let's draw a comparison between Skyforge leveling and WoW leveling. So you first of all start off here as a filthy noob, level 1 character, and you start grinding and leveling your process all the way to the max level. Needless to say, you can, for $60, get the max level 90 and also level to the max level from very high cap. And then after you hit the max level, guess what you need to do? You need to start farming gear and you need to get to that max gear, what expansion has to offer. Upon getting your gear cap, you usually we as a player start to get bored with the expansion, with the patch itself, because there's nothing else to do. There's no way for us to get stronger or evolve, and especially when the class design is so simplistic, there is not much skill we can gain as well, so we're looking for something to do up until the next patch comes out. When the new patch comes out, obviously we're gonna have to go out there, grind the gear again, gain the conquest cap, and obviously the more RNG, the slower it takes to get the max gear, the more people are gonna be subscribed, the more companies are gonna be making money. So once, again, we reach to that cap, guess what's gonna happen? We're gonna look for something to do, because once we max gear on the next patch, people usually unsubscribe, they get bored, and they start looking for, guess what, something else to do. And then the new expansion comes out that, guess what, will solve all our problems. Obviously the class design will be fixed, the game will be balanced, well, not really, but the new expansion comes out. We again have the small line of steep leveling till we get the max level. After getting the max level, guess what, we're gonna gear up. After the gear up, we're gonna look for something to do because the game is gonna get boring, and essentially that's the model of World of Warcraft. Now, is that a good model or is that a bad model? Honestly, it's not a bad model. It's what every single MMO does out there. You get the max level, you get your max gear, you look for something to do. And when it comes to looking for something to do, usually that's where the horizontal progression comes in. That's where usually PvP comes in, that's where usually Gary's working on the garrisons and stuff like that. That's horizontal progression that will be there always, no matter what your gear is. Kind of makes sense, right? But obviously, if the people not satisfied with the horizontal progression via class design or PvP content and everything else, they will get infinitely bored, they will unsubscribe, they will leave the game, and up until patch or new expansion, and then rinse and repeat. Now look at the Skyforge model. Essentially Skyforge is the same exact thing, but it made it so that there is always constant interest on playing the game. Here's our filthy noob. He's just starting to play the game, and let's say they start getting to play the game from the day one. So guess what, they get their weekly cap, they unlock their nodes, they unlock their caps, they unlock their classes, and after that, and once they're capped out, essentially what's gonna happen is they're gonna try to get that max gear possible that the content has to offer. Well, afterwards, obviously there's a small horizontal line where you look into something to do, like PvP, PvE, do some dungeons, help your friends, work on the garrison. And then guess what, the new week happens. So again, you cap out your classes, you cap out your proficiencies, you go out there in the dungeons, you max out your gear, you max out your order, and then you wait for next week. And this is the system of a Skyforge itself, the alchemy of a Skyforge, because you always progress your character. There's no such thing as a huge flat line of you not doing anything and there's nothing to progress on your character. And guess what? We are MMORPGers, we like the progression. Now in the example, let's say you are a late newbie, you decide to pick this game later on, and essentially what's gonna happen is, because you are a late newbie, guess what? The caps roll over every single week, so the newbies will actually have a much funner time because they will keep leveling every single week until they reach the cap like everybody else does, and they will be on an even playing field with other players. So essentially the way it works with the Skyforge is that, for example, let's say the first level, your level cap is only level 20. So once you get that week level 20, guess what you need to do? You'll need to go out there, raid, do dungeons, get Twinked up. Go PvP, get the PvP gear if you want to twink it from PvP or PvE. And that's after you down with your week. Guess what? The next week comes in, and then the next week, the same thing. But next week your cap is gonna be 25. So after you hit your 25, you twink out, you go raid, you go PvP. So think about it this way. Skyforge is an accelerated version of any traditional MMO out there, where it takes about 2 years for traditional MMO to come up with the new expansions and new content and a new leveling design. In Skyforge, it happens literally every single week, where you get your leveling cap increase and everything else. And guess what? With more levels, more prestige, a lot more stuff is going to be opened up to you. There is a huge storyline that you're actually going to be doing, and with that storyline, you will be unlocking more and more content and more stuff too, more dungeons, more raids, more forms. They're going to be adding more classes, and it's basically constantly evolving game. Now the biggest thing becomes well, whoever has the highest prestige or higher prestige will always going to be at advantage. Well, not really, because essentially the way it works is the new patches that are going to be coming out. If you enter the PvP area, you will be boosted to the max prestige level of your enemy, and therefore you getting prestige or you bomb rushing prestige is actually not going to directly affect your character in any way possible. In fact, it actually might hurt your character, because if you have an under-leveled gear and you get prestige boosted, your boosts are not that great compared to the lower prestige person who has maybe like half of your prestige but has the best gear possible for his prestige level. He might be a little bit even stat-wise stronger than you. So yeah, in this game, that's the dynamic leveling system, that's a dynamic leveling PvP entering that you do, and it's fun. With that said, let's actually get into the game itself, and let me start explaining you exactly what the leveling system and how it works. So first of all, the main idea and the concept is that you get these sparks. Spark of Destruction, Spark of Creation, and Spark of Balance. And these sparks are needed to actually get your first Atlas. So I started off as a Paladin, and I'm working as a Paladin tank. So you get these color sparks by just simply questing, PvPing, dungeoning. They are everywhere, and they have cap every single week, kind of like your leveling cap. So you actually essentially unlock all these abilities, unlock all these nodes, and you go with your class up until you hit the main point, which is out here, which is called Path of your own class. After that, you go to the Ascension Atlas and you unlock the Ascension Atlas, and that's the big confusing grid, which is not very confusing, but it takes time to get used to it. From here, you can actually see which talents and symbols you want to pick for your class. Also, which classes do you want to unlock? For example, I unlocked the Necromancer right here, and I unlocked the Witch over here. So I went all the way to the bottom, all the way to here, unlock the class. Guess what? Once you unlock the class, you're still gonna have to do the same thing, and you have to get those color sparks going right over here up until you actually get to the path of the class. Now, after you get the path of the class, you can only use the third currency, or I mean the second currency of a leveling. It's called the class specific sparks, and those class specific sparks will unlock some of the most powerful abilities and talents for your specific class. Now, when you look actually at the currency here and you see the limits, it will show you that how many colored sparks you can actually put out, and usually don't need many colored sparks to get to the path of the specific class. You only need those colored sparks essentially to get to the class, and that's where the bit of a grind comes in. And then you look at this and you see the class sparks by themselves, and that's what you actually need to stop unlocking and mastering the class itself. So with that said, that's the system of the leveling of a class unlocking and class ability and talents unlocking, and that's only 1/4 of the entire thing. Now, with that said, what a lot of people do is they hit the wall with their colored sparks, and then they're like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? The game becomes boring. Well, not really, because they don't experience the other portion that the game has to offer. Every single time you unlock the small nodes, you see how it says proficiency 5. Wait, some of them offer you proficiency. And what is proficiency essentially? Here, proficiency 5. For example, here, if I'm gonna like this guy, proficiency 7, this one doesn't have proficiency. Proficiency, what is the proficiency essentially do? And that's extremely important. Proficiency is, you can find it right over here. For example, my proficiency is 1133, meaning that I can equip items up to the item level of 1133. So for example, my scythe is a very old piece of garbage and it's only 818 proficiency, so I need to start doing more of a stronger raids and stronger dungeons and stronger squad zones or leveling zones or PvP to get a higher proficiency items, so I can actually keep expanding my character. Now, your prestige is a sum of your sparks that you put on the atlas, of your class sparks. Also, it's a sum of your proficiency gear that you put on your character, so how well you developed your gear, how well you twinked out your character essentially, how up to date the gear is. Your prestige is also a summation of your garrison, which we'll talk in just a few moments. So, with that said, that's essentially the leveling system. You unlock the proficiency the more you go around the atlas, you use that proficiency to twink out your character. Make sense so far? Hopefully it does. After that, there is another thing that you have to keep in mind. Here, when you're leveling the atlas, along this side, or usually it's at least 1 or 2 of those per node, you see it has greatness. Greatness increases your influence with the world. How many followers can actually follow you, how good of your garrison is, and essentially it affects your order. The more greatness you have, the more you can actually upgrade your temples to increase your essentially strength, your prestige, and it increases your stats such as might, stamina, and whole health bonus. And while this thing is actually pretty amazing and pretty solid and strong, it actually can work against you in PvP. This is where the biggest commotion happening in terms of, is it a pay to win game or is it a pay to progress, or what kind of game is it? Well, guess what? You can do missions and you can accelerate the missions that you actually do. If you are accelerating the missions, essentially what happens is every time you accelerate the mission, you get the missions completed, you increase your auto rank right over here, and you pay credits to get those accelerated. Once you accelerate those, essentially you level up your provinces, and that's how you gain your prestige, which sounds pay to winish. Well, not really, because in a week, if you're not procrastinating, you can do it easily without paying. I'm not paying for my order at all for already about like 5 to 6 days. I did it in the beginning and that was actually a huge mistake. I should have put my credits into some other better use. So that's not needed to progress, essentially. So, with that said, your order, the greatness that you get from the atlas, can be put into your order to upgrade and level up provinces. That's another way to gain the prestige. Again, the prestige is just a summation for your character and shows the overall strengths of your character. So, with that said, is every week that you get your cap on the sparks, think about it this way: you increase your level. You pick up some talents, some valuable talents, and some valuable symbols out here. And guess what? Your proficiency increases, meaning you can equip a better gear. A better gear leads you to a higher prestige even possible. So, with that said, guess what happens? When the raid's gonna appear, raid's gonna be constantly evolving every single week. Dungeons are evolving every single week and gets harder and harder and harder. So this is pretty awesome, because think about it this way. And the difficulty is also gets harder. Think about it this way: every week you get a new content, you get a new dungeons, you get new raids, you get new stuff to try out, to play out. Constant evolution of the game. Well, probably, obviously I'm exaggerating. Maybe it's not every week, maybe it's every month, depending on the progression that people put into. So, with that said, a lot of people have a misconception that once they are gearing up, max out their sparks and used all of their sparks, there's nothing else to do. Incorrect. That's where you go essentially to the main atlas. Give me a second. And then we'll just port to here. Dum 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 dum. Enjoy dancing Russian. No, I'm a terrible dancer. So here, you go here and it shows you where you want to cap. which nodes do you want to cap at which specific order, which currency for your garrison do you want to farm up, okay, which other currencies like sparks of transformation, which lets you respec ever so often and pick out the different specs for your class. Everything is gonna be out here in the atlas. You pick what you need and you level it up. It's that simple. But after you hit your cap, essentially, make sure you do the group dungeons at the max possible difficulty, and they are pretty difficult. Make sure you do the squads at the main possible difficulty and get those rewards. Get those dungeons, get all the stuff you need, max out your character gear, max out your character progression, max out your character equipment, amulets, obviously, and max out your garrison. Now, needless to say, this is something that a few people did, and it will bite them in the ass tremendously. What some of the Dinkelbergs did, essentially, is they went out and they only hunted the greatness nodes. So what that did for them is they became all this great, and they leveled up their order, and they became all this great and efficient, and all they did was hunting the greatness. Well, the problem with that is they will be too sporadic around the entire map. Second, the problem with that, they cannot unlock the classes that they will need in the future, or it will take them longer. And at the same time, the talents that they're going to be going for example, extra crit damage, extra strength, or whatever it is that you're looking for, it will take them longer to get there because they didn't go to any specific node, they didn't go to any specific class. What they did is they just mangaloaded the atlas and gain as much greatness as possible, so then they could level up their provinces. And that's actually not a really smart idea to do. But that's how you see people much higher prestige, like 27,000. When I was 18,000 and I was like averagely high, like there's a few people at 26, 27, 22,000 prestige. Well, guess what? It kind of works against them because A, it's the longer queue pops for the PvP takes a bit longer because there's specific cap windows for the prestige that you actually have to find. B, your classes are not getting you're not getting most out of your class. For example, for my necromancer, because I'm going for the crit damage, I literally have to spec into here, which increases my critical damage. I literally have to go out here to increase my base strength, and I have to go out here to increase my critical damage again. And my necromancer will be much deadlier than the necromancer who only, even if he's 2000 prestige higher than me, only if he went for the class necromancer and then he unlocked the bullshit nodes that nobody needs, like for example Kath Either slot or even tactical defense, like stuff like that. That's not the best symbols for your class. People still went for those just so they could get those greatness caps. So for those people who didn't go for them, you didn't miss out on anything. You are doing the right thing, and that's about it. Hopefully this video makes sense to you, gives you overview of how the entire leveling system works, on how a person who can start playing now can have 2 weeks of caps versus person who started playing last week and also has 2 weeks of caps. So the only difference is sometimes the founders who actually started playing this game before it came out and bought the game packs, they had 1 extra week of caps, which is not a big deal. It is a big deal now because essentially I have 3 caps over my competitor who only has 2 caps. But once you reach into a 50 caps itself, literally 50 weeks, 1 cap will not make a big difference. And if you enter the PvP zones and PvP areas, well, guess what? Those people who have a lower prestige than me, even though I played more than them, their prestige will be boosted up to my level regardless. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully this makes sense.